Joining me now is Acting Premier of New South Wales and usually the Deputy Premier and the Nationals leader, John Barilaro. Thank you for your time tonight.
Good evening, Shari.
Have you lost confidence in the Barrajiklian government that you are a part of?
No, I haven't lost confidence, but I think, my job as the leader of the New South Wales Nationals is to make sure we fight for regional and rural New South Wales. I want to make sure that our agenda is about jobs, job creations, protecting jobs, growing the economy, investment in the regions is front and centre of the government. And, I make no apology that I'll fight for that. And I'm quite, fierce about how protective I am of the regions and making sure that we get our fair share.
Why did you write an email to your leadership team, your ministers, just last night, asking them about their view on the future of the coalition government?
Well, my text message overnight is confidential and I don't normally share that. But look, if you go back to my speech at the New South Wales Nationals Conference in Barilaros only 6 weeks ago, I clearly said then, as the state government, as the New South Wales Nationals, one thing's clear, that from the election we've just had, and you've got to learn from every election there's a learning, and that is that the Nationals brand and the Nationals need to be out there fighting for what is right for regional rural New South Wales. And I think we've been over the last few years caught up that we're the Liberals and Nationals in government, but yet it's the Nationals at the table that are actually getting these wins. So my view is that we should be vocal, we should have some of these fights public, in the past probably behind closed doors. And I have said previously where if the title of Deputy Premier, in its own, if you think about the interpretation of that, it means as Deputy Premier I'm subservient to the Premier. The reality there is that if that actually stifles me being the leader of the Nationals and speaking on behalf of the National Party, my membership and my constituency, and that's the most important part here. It's about our constituents in the regions. If that title somehow stifles that, well, then I'm happy to surrender it. And I'm just testing that to see where it's at. I said that in my speech at Inverell, and that's public knowledge.
And what's been the feedback? Could the coalition split? Could the Nationals leave the coalition in New South Wales?
No, so I've never said that we should leave the coalition. And my view is, firstly, Gladys has actually been one of the best Liberal premiers for regional rural New South Wales. But that doesn't mean that we don't have different views. And I mean Liberals versus Nats. We're agrarian socialists versus the Liberals who in one way have their strong ideology, leaving it up to the market. There's already conflict there. We shouldn't hide from who we are. Regional and rural New South Wales deserves its fair share. It always can't be seen through the what I call a business case lens, and we'll fight for what is right. But, Gladys has been fantastic as a leader, as a Premier, looking after the regions, but I can't sit back and say, as the leader of the Nationals, I'm not going to continue to fight for a bigger share of the pie.
If she has been fantastic, what are your concerns with the government?
My concerns is twofold. One is firstly the bureaucracy which we're part of, and we're seeing that in recent days with Essential Energy, and it's a state-owned corporation, 100% owned by the government, yet the CEO, the board, are completely out of kilter with the agenda of the government, where we've already said clearly, the Premier, myself and the Treasurer, that we're going to protect all regional and rural public sector jobs because of drought. We can't afford to lose these jobs, and yet Essential Energy is on this bandwagon, on this journey to remove 182 jobs in the short term, probably up to 500 jobs over the next couple of years. And when an organised...
Is that a broken election promise? The Premier pledged that there would be no job losses in the bush.
It wasn't an election promise. We announced that when we announced Cabinet. It was a decision that we would protect those jobs because of the drought.
Is it a broken promise?
Well, it's not, because Essential Energy haven't cut those jobs yet, and we've been vocal. I've clearly said that if the CEO, and my view now, I've lost all confidence in the CEO of Essential Energy. So regardless of what happens, if we protect these jobs, and my goal is to protect these jobs, and I'm confident I'll do that along with the Premier. But I've got no confidence in the CEO and the board of Essential Energy, because they clearly have shown, and we've given them time to meet our agenda, and they've chosen not to. So, I think there's some real issues around state-owned corporations where they're 100% owned by the government, yet out of kilter with government agenda.
Are there other issues that have caused you to consider resigning as Deputy Premier? That this is a significant thing.
Yeah.
It's just a mere months from the New South Wales election in March this year, where you were re-elected. So what are your concerns? I think you need to articulate them to the public that are so big and that would cause you to consider stepping down from this position.
So I think people that have known me, and I'm pretty vocal and pretty blunt in how I see the world, and may not align with the political world. But my view is simple, is that my job is to make sure we do not soften our approach in representing regional rural New South Wales.
So you think the current government isn't doing enough?
No, I'm not saying that, because if you look at our track record over 8 years, we've done a significant amount. The investment is twice as much as what Labor did up to 2011. But my concern is going forward that we need to see more investment, and I don't want the ability to be able to say what I need to say to be stifled by a title. Well, no one out there cares about being Deputy Premier or
So what
title.
is it that you need to say? Are you being
what I want
now? What are your issues?
My number one issue is water infrastructure, making sure that we build the water infrastructure, learn from this drought, like we should have learned from the Millennium Drought, and get on with building dams and pipelines and upgrading weirs and seeing that investment. And forget about the ideology. Forget about environmental impact studies. I want to see every single water project in this state be treated as critical state infrastructure, truncate the process, and a few frogs have got to die because we've got to build a bloody dam. Let's do that, because I'm putting community before ideology. And the reason we're in this problem is because we've let the Greens over the last 2-3 decades dictate about water strategy and water infrastructure. That's probably the number one issue right now. Why? Because I fear we've got communities in regional and rural New South Wales that will run out of water.
What about the proceeds of electricity privatisation? My understanding is that you had a commitment that a third of the proceeds would be spent in rural areas and that this hasn't happened. Are you disappointed with this?
Yeah, so 30% of the funds of poles and wires and any other asset sales is for regional and rural New South Wales. That's legislated. The money sits there, but we've only got out about 19% of that fund in regional and rural New South Wales. And my concern there again comes from the bureaucracy seems to prioritise city, metro projects in front of regional projects. But that money is there. We haven't lost it. But I just want to see a priority around it, and no difference with the Snowy Hydro funds. That's 100% for the regions. I know I've upset a few of my Liberal colleagues winning that argument that 100% of those funds, $4.2 billion, going to the regions. But what I want to see is those projects up and running, not just more studies, not more design, no more planning, no more environmental impact studies, but let's just get on with spending that money and building that infrastructure.
I mean, you're blaming the bureaucracy on a couple of issues here, but you're the Deputy Premier and Gladys Berejiklian is the Premier. Surely this is a leadership issue. I mean, the bureaucracy doesn't run the state. Well,
unfortunately, you know, one of my frustrations is that the bureaucracy does. And bureaucracy...
But isn't that ultimately a leadership
issue? Absolutely.
So doesn't that land at Gladys Berejiklian's feet?
It lands at both Gladys and my feet. We're both the Premier, the Deputy Premier, the leader of the Liberal Party, leader of the National Party. And why I chose my speech at Inverell and what I'm saying today is sending a clear message to the bureaucracy, that we are in charge and it's time to get on board. Because a lot of these bureaucrats, and I'm going to admit this, I believe that 12 months leading into the last election into March, mate, they were sitting idle thinking there was going to be change of government, and I tell you what, it's time to square that little ledger up. I want to get on with building projects. Yes, we've got to show strong leadership. I believe we can do that, but I want to remind people we are the Nationals. I am the leader of the Nationals. There is no such thing as the coalition. The coalition is an arrangement, a framework, an agreement to govern, but we are the National Party, and I want to make sure that one of the learnings out of this election is that our brand is strong, because we're at the table, we've got the chequebook, and we'll deliver.
Well, the Liberal brand has suffered significantly in the past couple of weeks as the debate over the abortion legislation raged. The Premier is now overseas. There are reports that her days are numbered. Is this correct?
No, her days aren't numbered.
Will she lead the government to the next election?
She will definitely lead the government to the 2023 election. Secondly, I know that the Liberals and Gladys is getting a lot of criticism around the abortion debate. Let me just add, the Nationals, you know, bar 2 members voted for it. I'm one of them.
Well, on that, Ray Hadley this morning said that you were like a drover's dog in following the Premier and supporting the abortion legislation. Former Nationals leader John Anderson said the Nationals are looking like a mob of inner-city lefties over the abortion legislation, arguing that the Nationals are meant to be a conservative party. And they've mounted the argument that there's white-hot anger in a lot of the rural and regional areas over the position that you took on this legislation. Is that right? And do you think you made a mistake in not even calling for amendments when you decided to support the legislation?
Well, there's a few things there. Firstly, it was a conscience vote. So the idea that the party somehow are left-leaning...
But the Nationals are voting as a bloc.
Yeah, but they're members. They're members who have a conscience vote and have a right to vote. And the idea that we get to debate that, I know in my own electorate over the last 3 elections, the questions around pro-life, pro-choice is always asked, and I've made it absolutely clear where my position is. And my position on this has come from a life journey, some experiences when I was quite young that I think have influenced how I vote, but also in line with the conscience vote is how I believe my community votes. My view is, yes, I've spoken to John Anderson. There are members of the party that will say that this doesn't align with the party membership, but I disagree. I think our communities, our membership, the vast majority support it. It was Leslie Williams, the member for Port Macquarie, a National Party member, that put up a number of amendments, including the amendment that said, one, in relation to gender diversity selection, one, that we'll have a review, and in 12 months, if we need to put some legislation back in the House, we'll bring that back. But in that same amendment, it said, we do not support gender selection as part of the abortion. So that's all been lost. I know Ray Hadley kicked us today, and he pointed to that's why we're losing seats to the shooters. But the shooters, all three members of the shooters, Phil Donato, Helen Dalton, and Roy from Barwon, all voted for the legislation. I just want calm, respect in the debate. The upper house will deal with it. And my view is that I believe we're in touch with the vast majority of people in this state.
Have you made a decision what to do personally on your political future now that you've sent that message last night to get feedback from your leadership team?
Yeah, look, one of the things that I'm proud of the way I lead is actually embrace the opportunity to encourage all my members, plus my ministerial colleagues and my leadership team, about where do we go next. My view is simple. The title is one thing. My view is about getting on with the job of delivering. So for this term of government...
Are you going to stay as Deputy Premier for the next...
But that's a title. And that is a debate and a conversation.
Will you retain the title?
Well, that's not for me to give up, nor for me to retain, because under the coalition agreement, that is one of those positions that we argue for, and it's part of the coalition agreement. What I was seeking from my MPs and my ministers is it worth considering if it is in any way hampers our independence as a party? That's a conversation that our party room, the executive of the party, will have to discuss in the weeks ahead.
John Barilaro, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Shari.